Greetings, viewers. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you all for a very long time. It's the highlight of my week, really. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Dr. Pritchard Christmases. I'm an associate professor of gynecology at the Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons at Columbia University, and I also own my own practice which services the greater Manhattan area. I'm very grateful to the Evagal YouTube channel for giving me this time to have a chat with you all. So please, sit back, melt into that favorite armchair, or lie on that bed. Relax, friends. You've earned it. I'll give you a moment to settle in. This is hot chocolate, by the way. I might prefer it to tea or coffee. It's the caffeine, you see. Gives people temporary alertness while robbing them of their long-term stamina. So I prefer the drink of Moctezuma, even if it makes my order seem a little bit silly at restaurants or social gatherings. Nothing better. Now, friends, before we begin, I'd like to preface our little chat with a brief disclaimer about its contents. As some of you know, most of the videos on the Evagal YouTube channel attempt to be comedic, to make you, the viewer, laugh. Now, I don't think it diminishes from my advocacy of the channel to say that we don't always succeed. Sometimes the jokes don't land or the punchlines are bad, but I'll chalk that up to youthful exuberance unfettered by standards of quality. But the general trend is comedy. Therefore, I feel the need to make it very clear that there are no jokes in this video. There is no punchline. There will be no escalation of absurdity, no sudden comedic interludes halfway through. No, this video is played straight, and the chat that you and I are about to share will be sincere. Now, some of the facts which I have already given you about myself may seem to imply otherwise. My name and chosen medical profession, for example, may have already been construed by some viewers as typical of the absurdist style Evagal is so fond of. Dr. Pritchard Christmases, I hear you say. That's a ridiculous name. And gynecology? Isn't that the women's reproductive health field? Oh, Evagal, you subtle prudes. You think you were all born yesterday? These are all clearly either indications of tone or setups for upcoming jokes. Well, friends, I can assure you that my name is real. I get plenty of jokes about it from my students as it is. And my middle name is Clem, by the way, if you'll believe it. And while I do love to share a joke with my staff and patients, I take pride in my work and assure you that women's reproductive health is not a joke to me or to this channel. Understood? Great. I knew you would. Now, on to our chat. Today, we will be discussing the real business cycle theories in macroeconomics, along with the misperceptions theory that goes along with it. Let us get right into it. Oh, and for the students cramming before their final test, this will be taught at a lower to intermediate level. So that's where we will be going at. 1 second, please. So real business cycles. The business cycle is the term in macroeconomics used to determine the natural fluctuation between growths and recessions. So the real business cycle theory is the theory posited by the classical school of economics, as opposed to the Keynesian school, to explain real business cycles and tell a little bit about their effects. According to the real business cycle theory, real shocks, and especially productivity shocks, are what cause the business cycle. Adverse productivity shocks, so real business shocks, include things like technological developments, changes in the usability of capital or labor, things like this. So when we have an adverse productivity shock, this causes real wages, investment, consumption, output, and employment to decrease, while price and interest rate both increase. Now, according to the classical theory, output is always at its full employment level, which means that according to the classical school of economics, employment should always be zero, which, as we know, is not true in the real world. So how does the model cope with this? We have a difference in two types of employment. We have structural employment and frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is the answer to why, according to the model, employment is always zero, because frictional unemployment doesn't count towards structural unemployment. So frictional unemployment is usually just defined as the time between finding jobs or things of that nature. So it's less tangible things, like frictional unemployment would not include things such as, like if there's a collapse in the market, so everyone in that market gets laid off, that's not frictional unemployment. So there's also an assumption in the classical school that money is neutral. Now what that means is that changes in money does not change other things. But we know from real studies that this isn't the case. So how does the real business cycle model deal with the fact that money is not actually neutral in the real world? And indeed, money in the real world tends to be a leading pro-cyclical variable, which means that it precedes the real business cycle and it lines up with the business cycle. So the classical answer is called reverse causation. Now this states that when firms anticipate that they will be having greater amounts of output in the future, they will increase their money demand now. Now, the Federal Reserve, in order to keep the price levels at the same level, will see that increase in demand and inject more money into the economy. Therefore, output will end up increasing because the firms anticipated it. So while injected money does come before increase in output, it doesn't cause it. It's merely a symptom of it, and that is how the real business cycle works. Now, onto the misperceptions theory, which is another facet of the classical school of economics, especially as it relates to the business cycle. So, as we've stated earlier, the neutrality of money is false. So how does the classical school deal with this? What it does is the misperceptions theory. So if money is injected which is anticipated, it is neutral, because as the money is increased, people will know that is going to happen, and they will increase their demand as a result, thus leading to output remaining constant, although price will go up. But since the general population was able to perfectly anticipate the increase in the money supply, they were able to shift up along with it, therefore keeping everything in balance. Where money is not neutral, however, is when the Federal Reserve injects money which is unanticipated by the public, and that is demonstrated by this graph over here. So when this happens, aggregate demand will increase. This curve will shift up. But since people did not know that that was going to happen, the short-run aggregate supply curve will not shift to match it. Now what this means is that in the short run, the point of equilibrium will be on a position off of the long-run average supply curve, thus meaning that output is greater than what it could normally be on the long-run average supply curve. Over time, as people notice this, they will shift their expectations and shift output back. But really what this demonstrates right here is that money is going to be not neutral over the short term when it's unanticipated. Over the long term, it will shift back to match what it was in the anticipated function, but that will take time. So that is how the classical theory deals with the fact that money is non-neutral. And really, we can see this in a very intuitive way as well. So for example, if we expect that prices are going to increase by 5%, so that's what we anticipate, but then price actually ends up increasing by 8%, what we are going to do then is work harder to make up the difference so that we can keep up our same level of consumption, investment, etc. And what that means, since we're working harder, we're going to be making more products than we would otherwise, therefore output will increase. So that is a quick overview of the real business cycle theory and the misperceptions theory of the classical school. Yes, I hope you have enjoyed this lovely chat that we've had. I know I have. I'd like to end us off with a quick personal note to my wife, Martha, of 27 years. Martha, dear, if you're watching, I mean, there's no easy way to say this. Over these past 27 years, I've cheated on you with over a dozen of my patients.